This feels bizarre and a little nostalgic, as if I was transported back 3 years when I first started my channel and realized that the knife community really needs somebody to do independent hardness tests on pretty much all the blades. Back then I didn't have my Rockwell tester or even the Leap tester, so I resorted to these Japanese hardness files to test steel. And of course it's probably one of the least accurate methods in determining the hardness, but it does get you in the ballpark. So why am I doing this? Well, you have to watch the video and find out. And believe me, this review went from high to low and back to normal very quickly. So please, if you have time, watch the whole thing because it's going to be interesting. Today I have a rare chance to review 3 variations of the knife called Chop. It's produced by North Mountain Blades Company in the People's Republic of China. As you can see, Chop models vary by handle and blade sizes as well as different locking mechanisms. The blade material in all 3 boxes is labeled as SLD Magic. And this particular example was artfully modified by Ethan of Mile High Cargo and Whatnot, who is a designer extraordinaire and works with different finishes on the handles. The maker's mark on the blade stands for G Father Design. G Father is an in-house designer for North Mountain Blades. Unfortunately, his actual name is not publicly disclosed. Contrary to what most people think, the blades are not actually made out of SLD Magic steel, even though the boxes say that. The 3 blades you see on the screen are more correctly identified as forged Sanmai 3-layer 2-metal construction. The center layer in this case is made out of SLD Magic steel, which is a commercial designation of Hitachi-produced steel, which in turn is a variation of a D2 tool steel. And the nature of the modification was reduction in chromium to give it more edge retention at the cost of stainlessness. It is quite different from cold steel Sanmai version seen here. For starters, cold steel, rather than forging the Sanmai, hot roll it out of 3 plates, as evidenced here by the absolute straight boundary line between the metals. And the metals themselves are VG10 and 420J stainless steels. Some reviewers, also incorrectly, call this variation in the metals finish either Hamon or Hamon. Hamon refers to a blade heat treatment where the edge ends up being harder than part of the spine because part of the blade is covered by ceramic clay during the heat treatment process, resulting into much harder edge than the spine. The reason I can state with high certainty that this is forged and not just hot rolled is the shape of the line. It is not straight, it's quite wavy, and to achieve that, the billet of 2 alloys welded together and forged under high temperature and pressure then needs to be struck with a plate that creates indentations and then rolled out into the final thickness of the plate. Sorry about being in deep weeds, but if you like this kind of nerdy stuff, please subscribe to my channel or at least hit the like button if you're already a subscriber. In this segment, a master bladesmith combined 2 layers of stainless with this carbon steel in between, then case welded them completely shut to exclude any possibility of oxygen entering into the mix. The layers are also laced with borax. After heat soaking, he is now forge welding them together. And here comes the most custom part of this process. He put a striker plate that creates waves in the casing, and after that he will flat forge them again. And now he will get a completely flat billet, but when he starts grinding the blade, that wavy pattern will appear. As you can see, this is a very labor-intensive process. So this is how a large industrial company goes through the process of creating Sanmai or clad metal. As you can see, it requires large equipment. It is done in huge rolls or huge batches. Instead of a case forging, the layers are cinched together in a large vacuum furnace, which excludes oxygen and allows layers bond together better. It can then be annealed to relieve the stress between the layers, and then this roll is further tension relieved and annealed as required or cut into strips to be later shaped into blades. Due to difference in coefficient of thermal expansion of carbon and stainless steels, Sanmai is very susceptible to warping after heat treat, so quenching has to be done between aluminum plates. So what am I leading to in this segment? The key takeaway here is these knives are not mass-produced. They are made in a limited batches. I'm not so much speculating here, but making an educated guess, because to mass-produce this pattern would be nearly impossible and also very, very intensive in the equipment and labor. So there's really no point to doing it that way. On the flip side, there is this question: are we getting our money worth in metal here? I would say not necessarily. What the money goes to is this aesthetic of the hamon finish and just a beautiful pattern on the blades. I believe I will not be too far out on the limb comparing performance of this steel composition to that of CPM D2, which is a powder metallurgy form of D2. I also think on a stainless side it would be comparable to LMAX. So these knives being priced between $120 and $170 kind of makes sense to some people and will not make any sense to others, because in this price range there are foreign and domestic manufactured knives made with a more advanced powder metallurgy steels. Another consideration is the size of these blades. Those are large knives, and to some people that spells ability to sort of use them as a survival piece of gear. My position on this is it depends. These are composite blades, so how will they perform under stress? While I'm thinking about it, let's talk about delamination. From everything that I learned researching for this video, the boundary layer between the two steels is actually stronger than each steel taken individually. So you can put this worry right out of your mind. Right, enough talk. Let's make some measurements. Let's measure the thickness. I'm going to do it in inches first. Chop 2 comes in at 136 thousandths of an inch. Chop crossbar is about the same, 140 thousandths of an inch or so. And the chop plus beats them all, coming in at 171 thousandths of an inch. Let's do metric now. Chop 2 sits at 3.5 millimeters. Chop crossbar comes in at just a little thicker, 3.53, and chop 4 is solidly at 4.4 millimeters thick. Chop 2 weighs 7.4 ounces due to its heavy copper handles. Chop crossbar 5.2 ounces, very carryable weight, and chop plus is a little heavier at 5.7 ounces. And for my metric friends, 209 grams on a chop 2, 148 grams on chop crossbar, and 161 grams for chop plus. Chop 2 is 8 inches or 204 millimeters long. Its blade length is 3, and we're going to call it 3/4 inch or 94 millimeters. Chop crossbar is 8.5 inches or 215 millimeters long. Its blade length is 3 11/16 or 95 millimeters. Chop plus is the largest of the three. Overall length is 3 5/8, 220 millimeters. The blade length is 3 what do we got here? 7/8, 98 millimeters. And the cutting edge is full 4 inches or 100 millimeters. 101 millimeter, actually. And let's talk about user interface here. The handle on the Chop 2 button lock is made out of solid copper, making it a very robust, heavy feeling knife, even though it's the smallest blade on the table. The action is very snappy. They configured the plunger lock pretty well. One tiny little nitpick: I don't like when the blade rebounds on closure. The action on the crossbar lock version is second to none. Very snappy, making it easier to deploy with the thumb. Very good detent, feel no issues whatsoever. The handle is very comfortable. This shape is probably the best suited for my hand anyway. And the action is super snappy. I have dual emotions about Chop Plus equipped with the kickstop lock, which is a type of a flipper lock that disappears into the handle when you operate the knife, so it doesn't pop out on the other side. It just stays in place, leaving the underside clear for your fingers. If I was only judging these knives based on aesthetics, this would have become my favorite. But two things prevent me from feeling that way. One, it's a very anemic detent, requiring extra sort of enthusiastic action with my index finger to operate the blade, and ergonomically the narrowing handle puts my pinky finger right in the path of the blade as I'm trying to deploy it, which is further exacerbated by these notches that they put in, 26 per side, lots of notching. They could have easily cut the number of notches by a factor of 3 and increase their size so that at least they don't cause discomfort in your hand. I still think this is my favorite from ergonomic standpoint, because my medium to large size hand fits very comfortably on this size handle. It balances right behind the crossbar lock, which allows for a very easy, smooth blade play when switching positions in hand. Really like it. The pocket clip offers a natural pivot point for these gyrations. Really enjoy this. The Chop Plus has the center of balance a little farther back, nothing drastic, but because my hand is a little too small for this knife, I am having a little less of a flow with this one. And of course, this is a more decorative item, but let's give it a try anyway. Trying for the first time here, it's actually surprisingly snappy in hand once you get used to the different balance point. To rank the three, I would put the crossbar ergonomically at the top, and other than the two issues before, I ranked the Chop Plus at the bottom because it's too large for my hand. Next, let's take a look at the quality of grinds under the microscope. And to do that, I'm using this very inexpensive electronic microscope I obtained on Amazon. I'll provide a link to it in the description for this video. It became an indispensable tool in my sharpening arsenal because, as you will see in a second, it gets me close and personal to whatever I'm doing with a sharpening tool. I can see exactly what I'm doing in excruciating detail. This knife is sharpened pretty well. We're looking at Chop Plus. Nicely executed tip, no rollover. It does not appear to be stropped a lot, which is surprising because the edge looks shiny. Let's take a look at Chop Crossbar. By the way, all three of these knives were purchased on Whatnot. That's an app that I visit frequently. This particular blade was made for a store called Going Gear. They're both brick and mortar and Whatnot operators, and they were able to procure the first production run. This is blade number 51 out of 100. This blade has a perfectly executed apex. You can see there is no bright shiny line on the apex, meaning it comes to a very fine edge. I will put the link to join the Whatnot app into the video description. Please be aware that if you subscribe through my link, I will get a small kickback and you will get a $15 coupon for the first purchase. A very fine tip on this blade as well, but it looks like they stropped it a little bit more, so there's just a tiny rounding off at the very tip. Nothing that you couldn't take care of with the first sharpening, or even just by honing the blade. So the first two came from the Going Gear, and this one I won at the auction that was streamed by Mile High Club. The young man who ran the stream also created this beautiful, what he calls shipwreck finish on the copper handle. A very talented young man with a promising future in the knife community. I highly recommend when you jump on Whatnot, look him up. It's easy to remember, Mile High Club. And again, very well executed grind for this secondary bevel and the tip. By the way, I am not affiliated with any retailers on Whatnot, and if you decide to join that app, you will also be offered a referral link that you can disseminate amongst your friends and get a little kickback from the app. Now I'm showing the boundary layer between the SLD Magic steel on the right and the stainless, mystery stainless, I should say, on the left. You see, North Mountain does not advertise which steel did they use for the overlay layers. Typically, to form this very nice boundary pattern, it would be prudent to use martensitic steel. It is very likely to be a 400 series stainless, I just don't know which one. Unfortunately, I don't have an access to a spectrometer to determine the exact composition. The hardness of SLD Magic core is advertised to be 60 to 62 HRC. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of investigative hardness testing. You see, due to the laws of physics, the outer layer, if it were to be, let's say, 420 stainless, would end up being at 52 Rockwell when the core reaches 60 to 62. If, however, it is 406, 410, or 416, I would expect the outer layer hardness to be at 49 to 51 HRC. And so the emotional roller coaster for me began after I disassembled these knives for hardness testing and started the test. First, I tested 3 times using the diamond penetrator, which is reserved for Rockwell hardness scale C testing. To my shock and disappointment, the results were 22, 24, and 23 HRC. Just to be thorough, I replaced the diamond penetrator with a tungsten ball penetrator to measure it on the HRB scale reserved for softer metals. I got 105 HRB, which roughly equates to 20 HRC. I was not initially planning to test this blade because it's somewhat collectible due to its first production and serialization. And I did one poke and it came at 50.5 HRC. Without determining the exact hardness of the core, I cannot tell you for sure what the outer layer is made out of on this blade. But I can sort of deduce that it is probably 410 or 416 steel. This is the blade from Chop Plus, the one that tested very soft on the outer layer. As you just saw, there was an indentation from the Rockwell tester, and I'm going to use my Japanese hardness files to determine what hardness is the core at approximately. So I'm starting with a 40 HRC file, and you see it entering the scene, and I'm applying some amount of pressure to try to file it. The line it created was wiped off by my finger, so there's no scratching on the surface, meaning this blade is above 40 HRC. I'm grabbing 50 HRC next and repeating the step. The idea is to bracket out the hardness. For example, if this file creates a permanent scratch, that would mean that the core hardness here is between 40 and 50 HRC. And as you can see, there's no permanent scratch yet. I am moving next to the 60 HRC file and repeating the step. What happened next is kind of my mistake. Here I am doing the scratch test with a file here and wiping off the residue, and I did not notice that right there is a very shallow, barely noticeable scratch. And because of that, I move on to 65 HRC, thinking that it's over 60, but in reality I'm just putting an additional scratch here, so there's really no point in testing. So the conclusion is the SLD Magic layer on this knife is between 58 and 62 HRC, somewhere in this huge bracket area. Let's call it a 60 HRC and say it's pretty good for a D2 type steel. So where does it leave us? This knife here, the Chop Plus, I think it's a usable EDC knife. I think the hardness of the core being around 60 plus or minus maybe 1 or 2 points HRC is serviceable for D2 type steel, as I said earlier. And, you know, ergonomically, I could live with it. And some people would actually prefer the handle shape, such as this. The other two I did not test because this being signed by the artist who did the shipwreck camo finish on the handle, signed the box. So to me, it makes it collectible as well. It's like getting an early Paul Munko knife. And Chop Crossbar is also collectible because it's a first production run that was only available through Going Gear at the time, and I don't think anybody else is getting first production, so it's also collectible. Now, I am totally not done with North Mountain because I also obtained this knife. This is Dwayne Dwyer collaboration. Let me put it where you can see it better. Come on. There you go. And it's definitely an echo of a Strider. Dwayne Dwyer is a designer behind some of the most popular Strider knives. So he carried some of his intellectual property into creating these knives in collaboration with North Mountain. This blade is, where is it? The blade is CPM 3V right there. And it's full DLC coated titanium handles. So it was a pricier out of the 4 knives. And I'm really looking forward to doing a review on this because I think, aesthetically at least, it's a beautiful knife. And I think the OEM was able to fix all the issues that are so prevalent in actual production Striders. So if you would like to continue watching my reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. But even more importantly, nowadays there's a option to hype the video. It's only available to small channels such as mine, so I'm grateful for that. It definitely helps the algorithm on YouTube promote my video to more people. You will find it roughly in the same area on your screen where the like button is. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.